Do you feel like you're a survivor?
Yeah.
Slenderman is a tall, faceless figure dressed in a black suit.
They just wanted to go on a walk, and I didn't think much of it. It's just a walk. It's in Waukesha.
He has long arms, pale skin, and no visible eyes or mouth.
Oh, crazy. Stab.
He first appeared on the internet in 2009 as part of a Photoshop contest on a forum called Something Awful. What started as a creepy joke quickly grew into a full horror myth. People began writing stories about him, creating images, and even making games and videos. Slenderman lives in the shadows of forests, kidnaps children, and causes people to go mad, or so the legend says. He became popular on websites like Creepypasta and YouTube, where fans shared stories of fear and mystery. To many, he was just a scary character from the internet. But to some young minds, he became something much more real. The HBO documentary, Beware the Slenderman, shows how this online myth had a dangerous impact. It explores how a made-up figure influenced two 12-year-old girls to commit a violent act, thinking Slenderman was watching them. This documentary reminds us that stories, even fake ones, can shape real actions, especially when seen through the eyes of children. Fiction turns deadly. Slenderman was never meant to be real. He was created as internet fiction, something to scare people just for fun. But over time, the line between story and reality started to blur, especially for young minds. The documentary, Beware the Slenderman, shows how two 12-year-old girls, Morgan Gazer and Anissa Weier, became deeply obsessed with the Slenderman myth. They believed he was real. They believed he could hurt their families. And worst of all, they believed he demanded a sacrifice. What started as a game turned into a horrifying plan. The girls decided they needed to prove their loyalty to Slenderman by doing something terrible. On May 31, 2014, in Waukesha, Wisconsin, they lured their friend Peyton Littner into the woods. There, they stabbed her 19 times. This shocking act showed how fiction can become deadly when it's taken too far. The documentary doesn't just focus on the horror of the act, it asks a bigger question. How did two young girls come to believe a made-up monster was real enough to kill for? The story is not just about a crime. It's about the terrifying power of belief when mixed with fear and the internet. The girls behind the crime. Morgan Geiser and Anissa Weier were just 12 years old when they tried to kill their friend in the name of Slenderman. On the outside, they looked like normal middle schoolers. They lived in quiet homes, went to school, and played together like any other kids. But inside, something was very wrong, especially with how they saw the world. Morgan was a quiet, artistic girl who struggled with mental health issues. Later, doctors would diagnose her with early-onset schizophrenia. She often couldn't tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. Anissa, on the other hand, was more aware but easily influenced. She believed Morgan and became caught up in the fantasy. In Beware the Slenderman, viewers see home videos, interviews, and police footage that show how their obsession grew. These weren't evil kids. They were lost, scared, and deeply confused. They weren't planning a crime for fun. They thought they had to do it, or something terrible would happen to them. The documentary carefully explores their lives, showing how fear, belief, and loneliness pushed them toward a tragic decision. It reminds us that children can be deeply affected by what they see online, and that sometimes they can't understand where fiction ends and danger begins. A stabbing in the woods. On May 31, 2014, a quiet park in Waukesha, Wisconsin, became the scene of a chilling crime. Morgan Gazer and Anissa Weier had invited their friend, Peyton Littner, known as Bella, to them for a fun sleepover the night before. They laughed, played games, and acted like everything was normal. But hidden beneath the surface was a terrifying plan. The next morning, they led Peyton into the woods near the park. There, in a sudden and shocking moment, Morgan stabbed Peyton 19 times while Anissa stood nearby. The attack was brutal. Some of the wounds came dangerously close to major arteries. The girls believed they had to kill her as a sacrifice to Slenderman, to prove their loyalty so he wouldn't harm their families. They thought they would walk deep into the woods after the stabbing and find Slenderman's mansion, where they could live forever under his protection. Miraculously, Peyton didn't die. Despite the pain and fear, she crawled out of the woods and was found by a cyclist who called for help. Her survival was incredible. The documentary, Beware the Slenderman, captures this haunting moment, showing how a fictional tale turned into a real-world nightmare, and how one girl's strength helped bring the truth to light, belief or madness. After the attack, the question everyone asked was why. How could two young girls do something so violent to their friend? In Beware the Slenderman, this question is explored deeply. The answer isn't simple. It lies in a mix of belief, fear, mental illness, and the powerful pull of online stories. Morgan Geyser truly believed Slenderman was real. She didn't see him as a game or joke. She thought he was watching her, reading her thoughts, and could hurt her family. Later, doctors diagnosed her with schizophrenia, a serious mental illness that causes hallucinations and delusions. She saw things that weren't real and believed in threats that didn't exist. Anissa Weier wasn't mentally ill in the same way, but she believed Morgan. She was drawn into the fantasy and convinced herself they had to act, or something bad would happen. She didn't want to be the villain, but she feared being the victim. The documentary shows how fragile young minds can be, especially when mental illness goes unnoticed. It asks, were they truly evil? Or were they too young and too lost to understand right from wrong? In the end, it was a mix of belief and madness that led them down a dark path, with consequences that changed 3 lives forever. Internet's dark side. The internet can be a fun place for stories, games, and imagination. But it also has a dark side. Beware the Slenderman shows how a fictional character born online turned into something dangerous in the real world. Slenderman didn't come from books or movies. He was made on a forum, spread through memes, stories, and fan art, and grew on sites like Creepypasta and YouTube. For young kids like Morgan and Anissa, the line between fantasy and reality became blurry. They read story after story, watched creepy videos, and slowly began to believe that Slenderman was real. The internet, meant to entertain, became a place where fear grew unchecked. The documentary shows how easy it is to fall into deep online rabbit holes, especially for kids who feel lonely or misunderstood. Without strong guidance, what starts as harmless fun can become something dark and dangerous. Slenderman was never real, but the fear, obsession, and pain that followed were. Police and confessions. After Peyton was found bleeding in the woods, the police quickly began searching for Morgan and Anissa. They were found walking near a highway, still believing they were on their way to Slenderman's mansion in the forest. When questioned by police, both girls confessed in calm, chilling voices. They showed little emotion, as if they didn't fully understand what they had done. The footage shown in Beware the Slenderman is haunting. The girls explain their plan, their belief in Slenderman, and why they thought the attack was necessary. Morgan spoke of voices and visions. Anissa talked about being afraid of what would happen if they didn't go through with it. These confessions weren't just shocking, they revealed how deeply they believed in the fantasy. The police didn't need to break them down. The girls told everything. For the officers, it was clear this wasn't just a crime. It was a tragedy shaped by fear, mental illness, and the dark influence of the internet. Courtroom and consequences. The courtroom became a place of tough questions and heartbreaking truths. Were Morgan and Anissa cold-blooded criminals, or mentally ill children who lost touch with reality? Beware the Slenderman shows how the justice system struggled with this case. Both girls were charged as adults, shocking many due to their young age. Morgan was later diagnosed with schizophrenia and found not guilty by reason of mental disease. She was sent to a mental health facility. Anissa, though not psychotic, was ruled to have acted under delusion. She was also sent to a facility, though for a shorter term. The trial raised important questions. How should society treat young offenders who commit violent acts under extreme belief or mental illness? What role does the internet play in shaping dangerous ideas? The courtroom didn't just decide their fate. It exposed the need for better awareness, mental health support, and online safety for children before belief turns into tragedy. When horror becomes real, Slenderman began as a scary story on the internet, but for Morgan, Anissa, and Peyton, it became painfully real. Beware the Slenderman is more than a crime documentary. It's a warning. It shows how fiction can twist young minds, how mental illness can go unseen, and how the internet's darkest corners can trap vulnerable kids. This wasn't just about a stabbing. It was about 3 lives changed forever, 1 nearly lost, 2 shattered by fear and confusion. The story shows us that horror doesn't always stay in books or videos. Sometimes, it steps out of the screen and into real life. The documentary urges parents, teachers, and communities to pay attention to what kids are watching, what they believe, and how they're feeling. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't made up. They're the ones we fail to see growing in silence.